We are. Well, hello everyone. It's Monday night, and Monday night means we get to take a few minutes out of our busy schedules and talk about marriage. When we started this a few weeks ago, we had absolutely no idea what we were going to be doing, but we just knew that God said to do it. And so in obedience, we took a step of faith, and we shared the very first week with you guys. There were quite a few of you that joined us live, but even more of you that got to watch the replay. And we just shared our hearts for marriage, which ultimately, the reason why we think marriage is so important is, first of all, we know God created us for this, and we know that God is the author of marriage, and He has set clearly in His Word how we can walk this fun little road called marriage. But we talked about three things that we feel like are game changers in creating a healthy and cultivating a healthy marriage. Do you remember what they are from week one?
I do not.
Come on, baby.
No,
it's your
I do
favorite
not.
word.
Be intentional.
Be intentional. It's about living intentionally. And then it's about the pursuit, just pursuing each other, never forgetting that they are my first pursuit. And then the last one is my favorite part.
Quality time.
Connecting conversations.
Yep.
Come on, babe. Anyways, we didn't rehearse that part, obviously.
And as you can see, week 3, I'm still uncomfortable. So here we go.
So we said yes to this, knowing full well it was completely outside of both of our comfort zones. While I do love to communicate and talk to people all day long, Facebook Live has never been an avenue that I've stepped out in too much. So we're both just trusting the Lord, praying every single week before we hit the go button. Last week we talked about roles in marriages, and if you weren't able to watch that, we encourage you to go back and watch that, because it's so important for us to know and walk in and believe truly with all of our hearts what God created us for. So as a man, the key to your role is, what is your role as a man?
To lead well.
That's right. And mine is to walk in complete submission and to respect and honor, motivated and rooted completely in love and nothing else.
And tonight we just wanted to, as we prayed about what this week was to look like, we felt like communication. Mm-hmm. As you read marriage blogs and you read books, and obviously communication and finances are the two big areas that people fail at, or that people have the biggest stress inside their marriage. So we wanted to tackle communication tonight. So connect, encourage, lead, and reflect is what we'll be going over tonight.
Yep. So make sure that you invite your friends. You can do that even as we're sharing with you. You can share this on your page if you want to. Tag a friend. We don't want anybody to miss it. Every week we ask you guys a specific question and ask you guys to answer in the comments. So as we're talking about communication, we would love for you to share with us what works for you guys in communicating with your spouse. So we would love for you to share that in the comments, and we're going to have some other stuff for you to share later on in the comments. But for right now, we're just going to start with what we believe to be the groundwork for communication, and then we're going to go into some specifics and share some stories.
So communication for you husbands out there that are watching, this is something that I feel like comes natural inside the marriage. I feel like sometimes we communicate well outside the marriage as men in our jobs, whatever that may look like. But for women, it's very comfortable, comes natural inside the home. So guys, this is something that we truly have to work at. We have to be intentional, my favorite word, about connecting with our wife and communicating with them so that we're doing our role, as we talked about last week. For you to be connect with your wife, you have to first communicate with her, to stay connected. Connected for them is different than it is for us. So in our marriage, how we connect is going to look different than your marriage. So what we say is just some ideas on how for you to hopefully connect and communicate with your spouse, but it is going to be different for your marriage. So just pray about it and ask God, how do I connect with my wife? How do I connect with my husband if you're the wife? But I want to read Psalms 19:14, and this is for me, the connection is to let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord. And for me, if I'm not connected with Him, then I'm probably not doing a good job connecting with her. So in our marriage, after 24 years, I noticed that when I'm failing my walk with the Lord, then I'm probably not doing her what I need to be is in communicating. So I may be shut off from God sometimes. Therefore, I see it inside my house of not communicating with my wife. Therefore, I'm shut off to her. And one way for us, we talked about it, I think, in week 1, is just taking walks. As simple as that sounds, we get on a trail and we walk and we're side by side. And there's something for us when we're side by side. We're not staring at each other. It's not that awkward, okay, I hope she didn't ask me something I don't want. And like we told you, we make a game out of it. But it really allows us to communicate well, which connects us. So we play that game. We told you we ask questions. But what I really love about it is we're hand in hand. So we're connected. God calls us together to be connected. So we're hand in hand. We're walking. We're looking at what God created. It takes your mind off all the stuff that you did that day. And then we're able just to be real with each other. And sometimes it's funny, but sometimes it leads serious. But it really allows us to communicate and be connected.
One of my favorite things that Chad initiated in our walks, I love to say marriage is a walk in the park. A little bit of a play on words. It's not easy, but so many times when we can go for a walk, we do connect in one of the most intimate ways, because our hearts connect. It's not about anything else, but just the conversations that are connecting us together. But one of the times I had this great idea. We started asking these questions, and he would ask a question, and then I'd be like, ooh, that's a good question. So I want to ask the same question. He's like, whoa. Wait a minute. Like, I get to ask a question, and then you get to ask a question, but you don't get to ask the same question. And that's really hard, and it requires a little bit of self-control, because, of course, if they ask something we want to know about the other, we're like, okay, mental note, got to save that one for later. A lot of times I go in with, like, this arsenal of things I want to ask, but as we continue to walk and talk, they just shift and they flow and they go with whatever it is. And sometimes they're just lighthearted. I remember one of the times we were just talking about relationships, friendships. We've talked about where you want to go on our next overnight date, or it can be anything. Nothing is off limits, but it's also a great place to ask real questions like, what's your greatest fear right now? Or is there anything you're struggling with that I don't know about? And it's a safe place, like you said, because we're shoulder to shoulder, but hand in hand. And there's something about not having to look each other in the face that gives you permission to be able to share some of the things that are harder when you're looking at each other and you can see the facial expressions and you can see the impact. And the cool thing is when you're in the middle of a trail or on a path or you're 2 blocks away from your house, it's not like anybody can run and hide in that moment. You can walk quietly together, and sometimes the words do stop for a minute as you're processing through it. But you're not in a place where you can run away from each other. You're stuck side by side. And so we do use that tool, and we challenge couples all the time. Ask questions. Whatever that needs to look like for you, but you don't get to know somebody without asking questions. I don't meet you for the first time and be like, hey, I'm Megan, and you're like, hey, I'm Stacy, and we're just gonna be lifelong friends. Although I did do that to my friend Stacy, it took some cultivating of the relationship, and you cultivate relationships through getting to know each other, through asking questions, through spending time together. So make sure that we don't treat other relationships outside of our marriage as more important or more valuable to have those connecting conversations with than we do the person that we sleep next to.
And if you're newly married, I highly recommend this, whether you're 40 years of marriage or you're newly married or thinking about getting married. Maybe you're in that dating stage and you think that they're the one. Begin taking these walks, because what we do a lot of times on these walks is for connecting for us is we dream together. And when we do these walks, we come up with our bucket list of where we want to go, what we want to do, what we want to achieve. Yep. And it just takes all the pressure of life off of it.
Mm-hmm. So we communicate to connect. That's the first thing that we do. And as long as we have the right objectives in our communication, then we can use it the way that God intended it to be used for us. So the next thing that we do is we communicate to encourage. We talked a little bit about this in our role as husband and wife last week, that my role as a wife is I get to be his biggest cheerleader. I get to watch from the sidelines sometimes. And sometimes have you ever seen those cheerleaders or those soccer moms who like run down the entire field? Like that's what I feel like my role is, more than just being stationary and watching from a distance. It's like I'm running this race with him while I'm not on the field with him. I am I get to be his biggest cheerleader, and I get to use my words to encourage, build up. But encouraging words also call out. They call out the bigger things. They ask the questions that lead to causing him to think about and process through things that he might not even think about or process. First, one of the things that comes to mind right now, one of the biggest ways that I've encouraged him and is in his ability to encourage and inspire, and his passion for men and their role within marriage. We love marriage and we love being married, not because we're awesome at it, but because we believe that early on in our marriage, when God got a hold of Chad's life, that he began this deep, he began to plant these seeds for this deep-seated desire to be connected and to leave a legacy of love. Really, we wanted our kids to see what a godly marriage could look like, and we wanted them to spend forever with somebody who loved them and brought out the best in them and could be what God intended it to be.
And for me, encouragement, she's as she said, the cheerleader running beside me and cheering me on, and hers are words, and I love that because as I get older, I realize that her words truly encourage me. But for me, it's more when I listen to her well, and for me to encourage her is when I do things special for her. When I've listened to something that she probably thought I really wasn't paying attention to, but I'll bring it up in conversations, maybe on our walk, and she'll look at me just like, I didn't know you were listening. And I'm like, of course I was listening.
Because he remembers everything, and I'm really good at forgetting things.
So I encourage your spouse by just listening to them, and then in later conversations bring it up because it means a lot to them. And she does the same for me, but she also does the flips and encourages, and just short of pom-pom, she encourages me.
I don't really flip, but
Yeah, that's true. That's
anymore.
true. Yeah.
I used to.
But connect, encourage, and our third thing would be to lead. And men, this is for us. She makes my job easier to lead because she is such an encourager for me. So I'm going to talk to the ladies just for a second as wives. If maybe your husband's leading, maybe he's not leading, and you're desiring for him to lead your marriage, to lead out, ask yourself, are you encouraging him? Because if you're not encouraging him, that is really, really hard to lead. I don't know if you've ever been into a job that you really hate and you don't like, and it's hard to go in every morning. Same within a marriage. If you're not getting encouraged by your spouse, by your wife, and you're desiring him to lead out, begin to encourage him. Tell him that you love him. Tell him that you're proud of him. My wife tells me 10 times a day how proud she is of me. And how can you not lead well when somebody's following you? But then we talked about last week, are you worth following? So men, this is on you. Are you doing the things that's worth following?
I think for me, one of the best ways, and this is for men and women, but one of the best ways that Chad leads me without saying a word is his relationship with God is his priority. It's his number one. And I will follow him anywhere because I know he's seeking the Lord, and I know he's praying, and I know he's reading the word. And while it's not about a checklist, it is about a spiritual discipline that God designed us to know him, to love him, and to be loved by him. And the only way that we can know his love and that we can know him is through his word and through the incredible works and miracles that he did. But practically, if I walk upstairs into our office now, and it used to be, and when we were in the little farmhouse behind the house, when it was I would walk into the kitchen, living room. It was all one room. Who am I kidding? I would get out of bed. He would be long gone for the day, and I would just see his Bible open. And I knew that he had been in the Word. I knew sometimes he even actually left me notes to find just sitting on top of his Bible, or I could just see where he had underlined and be on the same page spiritually without having to sit down with him and do quiet times together or have prayer time together. It initiated my conversation with the Lord, which started first and foremost with gratitude. Lord, thank you that I am married to a man that loves you more than anything else, and that he loves us because of his love for you and because of your love for us. So that's one of the ways that Chad leads, is by example, and it's without words but with actions.
It reminds me, talking about connection, and guys, we all have these dreams inside of us, and I encourage you on your walks as you're communicating, connecting, is to talk about dreams. And I'll never forget, my wife was a city girl. I moved her to Aledo, which was pretty far forward. Then I moved her to Weatherford, which was even further. And then God had reminded me that I wanted to own some land. And when I told her, hey, I want to buy land, and as the property that we bought came on for sale, I told my wife, and we were already connected in that. And she encouraged me, let's do it. This is your dream. But if I hadn't have been connecting and sharing those dreams, and we would have been my dream and not her dream, and I never would have.
For a little bit.
Yeah, but you were on board with it.
Not at first when you were taking me out to the middle of nowhere.
No,
remember those?
That's
those
right.
Before you
you were on
started
board
sharing.
with me following my dream.
Yes,
Yeah.
after you shared your heart.
Right. So when we communicated with it, she got on board with it because we were connected in it.
Yep. But I do remember the time before he had the opportunity to share his heart with me, he was just looking at land, and I thought this was a waste of my Saturday. But after the time when he shared, like, hey, God reminded me of this dream that I had when I was a kid. And I remember just as soon as I heard that, because I knew it was him sharing his heart with me, my heart settled. And I was like, okay, I can lay down anything I think are my dreams to follow what I know are his.
That's right. Still, we had to buy property close to the highway, though.
Yes.
That's right.
God is good.
Target's got to be close.
I'm the same distance from Target as I was before.
That's
so,
right. That's right.
See, and Chick-fil-A. He loves me.
And guys, one way I lead my wife is whether I shoot her a text in the morning after I leave of just kind of what God spoke to me, what God was telling me. Leave her a note, and she encourages me. I was just looking as we were preparing tonight. She had written in my journal, and I leave my journal open. It's not, when you become married, you want your wife to know what you're seeking out, what you're studying, kind of where you're at. And there's nothing that she can't read in my journal, and my wife will write me an encouragement inside my journal at the last page that I wrote on, which is super encouraging for us, or for me.
Yep. Because written words last forever. Well, unless you lose the book.
Yeah.
So we communicate to connect, we communicate to encourage, we communicate to lead by example and lead by example. And then the last thing is we communicate to reflect. And this is one of those things that it took us some time to get to this place. For me, one of my greatest areas of weakness is I am by default a perfectionist, and that brings out in me this performer mentality. Like, I have to be perfect, I have to be the perfect wife, I have to be the perfect mom, I have to be the best at this, I have to put my best foot forward. And while those aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves, if they're the key motivator that is keeping me going, then I can't find my identity in all of those things. My identity is in who I am in Christ and who he says I am and who he equips me to be. But this communicating to reflect became a part of our marriage when I was willing to be okay with the fact that I wasn't perfect, that I didn't have it all figured out, that there were areas for me to grow. And I sought out feedback. I sought out honest, it was really allowing him to lead me, but I invited it into my life. And I do that by just asking the simple question, how am I doing as a wife right now? Or how are we doing? Or, is there anything you need from me? Those are 3 key questions that every couple needs to be willing to ask each other. But before you can ask each other, you have to be willing to hear what they have to say without defending, without getting offended, and without allowing it to draw a wedge. So if I ask Chad the question like, hey, is there anything you need from me? And he says, I really need you to, here's the truth. I forget to do things sometimes. He'll say, hey, what are you doing today? And I'm like, I'm going to do laundry, and I'm going to go to the cleaners, and I have all these ambitions. But then somewhere along the way, my day just gets away from me, or I forget that thing because I went to the cleaners, but then I was across the street from the grocery store. So I went into the grocery store, and after I got the groceries, then I decided I was going to take food to somebody, and then I did that. Oh, and then somebody invited me to lunch, and then by the time I got home, there was no time left to do laundry. And for him, he's a big, he's not a keep the law, you have to do these things, but he's like, you do what you say you're going to do. So that day, the day got away from me, and I forgot to do that thing that I had said when I was super ambitious and focused that morning that I was going to do. And when I asked him that question, like, hey, is there anything you need from me? He was honest because he was a little bit frustrated that I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And he's like, I need you to do the laundry. Which I could have taken that and been offended and be like, all he cares about is his dang laundry, which is so far from the truth. He's just trying to help lead me to follow through with the things that are important. So we ask those questions it's just a checkup. It's a way to evaluate and be honest with each other and with ourselves about all that stuff.
You know, in that, and I do that very poorly sometimes. Poorly, I probably make her think it's more of a checklist than the encouragement of how I lead her. But the reality is that, like I said, I ask her what's on her day, not to hold her accountable to a checklist. But that's one thing that she needs encouragement in is getting things done. So that we've learned it works for us. But this is something that I forget to ask is, how am I doing? She does it a lot. And so I get to ask her, and then I'm like, well, now I can't just ask how am I doing, because I'm just, going back to what she's doing. Now she's leading.
Yeah,
so,
sometimes I get a little frustrated because if I go in asking how I'm doing so that he'll ask how he's doing so that I can tell him how he's doing, then my heart's not in the right place.
So connect, encourage, lead, and reflect. I am working on the reflect side. I do not have that 24 years, and I still don't have that down. But that's something we've only done probably in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And I struggle at it. I still, we get all this, we connect. I'm like, man, we just connected. How do I have to reflect now? But it's very helpful. It's very helpful, especially during the tough seasons when you're both crazy and you're both going busy, and I'm not doing something that she needs out of me. I'm not being something that she needs, or vice versa. And then when we say that in love, we say, hey, I need you to spend time with me, or I need to be your priority in love, and we connect again.
Yeah, and I remember one time specifically, it's so many times it's not necessarily about what we say, but it could be how we say it and the timing for saying it. So Chad came home one day after, it was a few years ago, he came home, it was after a long day at work, and he's like, I don't even remember what he asked me, but I was like, my response, I think he was asking me how my day was. He's like, how was your day? And I was like, it was okay. He goes, well, what was okay about it? I was like, it was just a hard day. Well, why was it hard? Of course, I end up crying. He's like, what did I do? I have no idea
reflecting.
what I did. And then finally, after I kind of worked through the emotion of the moment, I was like, I need you to ask me how I'm doing, not ask how my day was. And then when I cry, don't say what's wrong with you. Say what's going on, or do you want to talk about it? And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't that he said what's wrong with you, because he was really trying to say, like, why are you crying? What's going on? What can I do? How can I help? But in my mind and in my heart in that moment, it was just in a tender spot, and all I heard was something was wrong with me because I'm crying right now. And instead, I just needed his embrace, and then I needed him to ask it a different way. So I was able to share that with him. Like, hey, it's not what you said. It was the way that it made me feel, the way that you directed it at me. And so I got to help him see how I need. I'm like, I need you to ask me how I'm doing, not what I'm doing. I need you to ask me how my heart is, not how my day was. And so just helping him understand some of those things that are important and that I need.
And probably in that moment, I shut down, because I was like, wait a minute, we
trying.
just talked about, hey, check on me, ask how I'm doing. And I'm thinking, man, in my head, I did this, I asked this. But when she was able to come back to me, I was able to say, okay, I could have asked that in a different way.
Yeah.
I was asking more of the work, what was wrong, what went on, and she was wanting me to connect with her heart. So in that moment, we were not connected. Our hearts were not connected.
Right.
She was, if I remember right, she was cooking dinner, and then I'm like, wow,
He was in the other room asking.
Yeah, thinking,
so, note to men: don't say what's wrong with you when your wife is crying. Just it'll help. It'll help.
It will help. Absolutely.
So those are just the 4 areas that we feel like God wanted us to land on today, is that we communicate to connect, we communicate to encourage, we communicate to lead, and we communicate to reflect. And one of the last things that I felt like was a part of this reflecting was also just celebrating. Take time to celebrate what God's doing in you personally, what God's doing in your marriage, what you're experiencing at work, what you're experiencing with your kids. It's really easy for us to talk about all the things that aren't awesome. So what if we just spent some time really talking about the things that are awesome? You know, I've gotten to the point now that when I experience a victory with my kids or with work or with, I mean, really with myself, I have a lot of yay me moments, don't I?
You do.
I do.
You do.
But I have friends who have encouraged me enough that I'm like, yay me! Like, I can be proud of me and I can be excited about what's going on. But take time to celebrate. Take time to talk about the things that are going good so that the conversations aren't always about the hard things or what you need to work on or what you need to fix. That those moments of celebration are the things that are replaying over and over and over.
Absolutely.
And remember, it's not so much about what you say, but it's how you say it. It's not just your words, it's your attitudes, your tone of voice, your facial expressions. It's all part of it. It's like that meme I think I've seen, you know, don't listen to, you know, listen to my words, not what my face is trying to say to you right now. It's just guarding that. Because, I mean, literally in the middle of hard moments, Chad's like, if you could see your face right now, and trust me, I'm like,
Yeah.
but it calls.
So we made Facebook Live just so we can see each other's faces, right?
We were definitely doing that before we started.
Yes, we were. You know, and what you was talking about, just celebrating, we sum that up as to dream, laugh, and love, and that's what marriage is about, is dreaming with your spouse. You've always focused on yourself, and it's been about you. Now you've added somebody, you're connected, so now you get to dream together. So 2 is better than 1.
Absolutely.
And we love to laugh. We love to laugh at each other, laugh with each other.
Most of the time, it's laughing at me.
Well, that's with each other. And then we love to love. I love figuring out new things after 24 years of marriage. She doesn't know what kind of cake I like. We just found that out. But
Seriously, guys.
But we love to love each other. And if you'll stop and you'll listen, then you'll learn how to love your wife or your husband.
So here's how we want to finish today based on that little story you just told. Here's the $1 million question. Are you a cake person or an icing person? And is your spouse a cake person or an icing person? So here's what we're going to do. Because we've shared this with you guys before, we love to give things away. And what do we want to give away is one of our favorite communication tools that we started about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. I need to look at it. About 10 years ago, I gave Chad this sweet sentimental gift that I was so excited about because I thought it was just going to be the best thing ever. And it was a journal, just like a simple journal with lines inside. This actually isn't ours. This is one of the ones that I'm going to be giving away. Just a simple journal. And we would use it to write back and forth to each other. You can use it on a holiday. You can use it. We would take it on weekend getaways, overnight dates, family vacations.
When I would travel, you'd send it.
When he would travel or I would go out of town for something, we would send it with each other. And the fun was, there's no rules or regulations for what you write or don't write in it. So it can be an encouragement. It can be a prayer. It can be a thank you note. It can be. It's even been a great communication tool when there's some hard things that we're walking through. If we've had a moment or two where we're not seeing eye to eye on something, or we're in the middle of a conflict, we can use it just to communicate our feelings and our thoughts. It's never full of accusations, but it's more us processing what the Lord's trying to teach us through that, and our hopes or our prayers for what's going to happen on the other side of this. And when we were leading in marriage ministry, we actually gave one of these as a gift to every single couple that was a part of our ministry, because we believe in it so much, because we're going 8, 9, 10 years. I need to go back and look at it strong into it. And it's such a sweet piece of just
And there's a lot of encouragement. There's a lot of hard letters to each other. And it's another way we connect. You know, obviously, if we're traveling, we're not hand to hand and going down a path. And so we send that journal, and we're able to, reflect. It's probably our biggest tool that helps us reflect of how we're doing and what we need to change or what I need from each other. But it's sweet when you read it. It's not this text message that was sent in the middle of a fight, or sent because I want her to know where I stand or what she did wrong or what I did wrong. But it allows us to reflect on how we're doing.
Yep. And it's probably one of those things that I hope in my head, if anything were to ever happen and the house was burning down, that I would be able to grab it, because I think it's going to be just a family heirloom, because it's so precious and so sweet to us. Well, we're thankful that you guys took the time